Hey Gooba, are you ready to record this Mystery of the Seven Keys review?
Yeah. Well, one of us is gonna have to change.
What about her?
Alright, let's do this. Hey detectives, it's Gooba and Jetpack, and today we're going to be reviewing the latest mystery from Her Interactive, Nancy Drew, Mystery of the Seven Keys. We know a lot of people haven't played the game yet, so we're going to keep this spoiler free.
Also, we will be giving away copies of the game. Details to follow in this video. Full disclosure, we received the game for free in exchange for this review, but that's not going to change your review in any way.
I know I started a little bit of controversy with my last video on the Nancy Drew series, so it's time to see once and for all if this game lived up to all the anticipation for it. Starting with how the game runs, we played on Jetpack's PC, which met the requirements listed on Her Interactive site, and we were able to seamlessly run the game on high settings.
Once you jump into the game, seasoned detectives will quickly realize that the gameplay for Key is vastly different from the early 30-something games. They introduced us to a new navigation system while giving players the option to go back to the old point and click. They gave the UI a polish from mid and granted us the ability to sprint freely all over Prague,
which we quickly abused because Nancy is so fucking fast.
She is. All these changes are great. The open world navigation system takes a little getting used to for those who aren't used to WASD controls, but the other features are a welcome upgrade.
But along with all the improvements, there are a few drawbacks. At first, Jetpack was so excited when her Microsoft controller worked to control the game. Until it didn't. It worked for movement and selecting some things, but when we tried to pick a conversation option with the controller, it just would not work.
It also wouldn't let us switch back to the mouse and keyboard, so we had to speed run the game after force closing it to get back to where we were, which luckily wasn't very far.
After that point, just having the controller plugged in messed with the controls, which Her Interactive is aware of and have addressed on the game store page.
An exciting built-out feature from mid is texting. You need to review phone conversations and send text to get information and progress the game, which isn't that exciting, but it's exciting to think about what AI could do in the future with these games. Like, imagine you manually type a text to Ned and mention keywords that relate to a certain puzzle. AI reads that, understands you're asking for a hint, and crafts a message in response. I think it's possible in the not so far future.
But while Her Interactive focused on fleshing out the texting feature from mid, it seems like they neglected phone contacts. We could call a few characters now and then when Nancy prompted, but we no longer had the option to call up Frank, Joe, or even Nedstifer for a hint.
Even Daddy Golf Ball consistently sent us to voicemail.
A great improvement from mid is that you can review past dialogue with the click of a button. So if you're a happy clicker like Jetpack over here, you can easily scroll up and review what you just sped past the first time.
Otherwise, it's the same old Nancy Drew. You wander around, you steal people's things, you bother the crap out of suspects, you solve puzzles, you do unpaid labor, you learn local lore, the works.
There were a few key differences. Anyway, we played as amateur sleuths, and this game was hard, man.
One thing I missed from the old games was Nancy doesn't talk to herself, at least not in a productive way. She'll make small quips about things not being correct when you're trying to solve something, which is helpful, but she doesn't make hints that guide a player through the puzzle. For example, think about how in Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon, Nancy reads a slip of paper that says,
"Lead is the key," or is it "lead is the key"?
This gives the player the idea about what the solution to a future puzzle could be. It's a helpful hint that Nancy says aloud to herself. There was none of that in this game.
Which would have been okay if we were playing on Master Sleuth level, but if you watch our streams, you know that's usually not our vibe. There were multiple puzzles where we were completely stuck and could have been able to solve it if we were given any little bit of direction.
We almost always got none, other than a couple bad puzzles.
Which we will cheat on next time we play.
Absolutely. The puzzles were good and there were a decent amount of variety. They were just really hard and needed more direction. And pray you don't get stuck like us on a puzzle with a short looping soundtrack and repeating background noises. We almost didn't make it out with our sanity.
We really tried not to use the hint system, but There were times where we just had to. It's a similar system to the newer games where you click to reveal a hint, and if that doesn't work, you have the option to ask for another and another until the solution is given.
And the few times we did use it, the first few hints were things we already knew or did, and then it would take a huge leap and just give us part of the solution, rather than helping us understand how to get there. Maybe using the strategy guide would have been better, but we honestly didn't even look at it. So maybe that's on us.
Along with puzzles, a good minigame can make or break a Nancy Drew game. Plenty of people have save files on their computers just to be able to play their beloved cooking minigames on demand. And good news is the coffee minigame for Key is introduced very early, and you can go make a few cuppas anytime you like.
The physics of how the objects within the minigame move and interact with each other was neat. There is a puzzle aspect to the minigame where some recipes call for solving things or recalling other recipes, and the latte art is fun, but we think this one could have been even better.
On the cafe menu, we have options for iced coffees, teas, and more flavors, but the espresso beverages we serve are pretty limited. I get that this is a coffee making minigame and a mystery game, but it just left me wanting a little bit more.
I would have liked higher stakes or a reward of some kind. Imagine customers lining up, becoming impatient with Nancy, or earning in-game currency for certain purchases, which I'll stay vague about for sake of spoilers. If you like relaxing minigames, this one will be your cup of tea, or espresso.
When it comes to the environments, this game felt like a step up from Mid. Well, some of them. The larger environments felt pretty empty. The scattered NPCs in huge locations just felt off to me.
The cafe, which I won't attempt to pronounce, was so cozy. The steaming cups of espresso, the pastries littered all over the cafe tables. I know we would love to grab a coffee and get lost in those books.
Speaking of books, Scuba and Laugh Track, I see what you did there.
Thanks, Scuba. Being an ambience freak and a lover of good sound design, at first we were so disappointed in the game. But after fiddling with our sound settings, we found that there are great ambient sounds within Key. They're just buried under the admittedly fantastic soundtrack.
In the square, you can hear the fountain trickle, the church bells in the distance, the people chatter, though you wouldn't know if you actually looked at their lifeless mouth holes stay completely still. In the cafe, it's whispers and cups clinking. We won't go into too much detail about other locations, but it's all very nicely done.
Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about plot without actually talking about plot. Remember, we're keeping this spoiler free.
Overall, I would say the story was good. It was engaging, full of history, complex, and honestly, actually scary at times.
And he eats his friends on Little Nightmares. But seriously, this was one of the scarier Nancy Drew games. There are a few moments that had us on the edge of our seats and a couple jump scares that were borderline cruel.
Neither of us were really able to predict who the culprit was, and there were some great twists that we truly did not expect.
And speaking of culprit and suspects, the characters overall were great. We can appreciate that they took extra time to animate multiple poses for the characters. It just makes sense that the coffee shop owner is constantly moving around serving espresso and cakes while chatting with Nancy.
And it was clearly at the expense of animating new and improved NPCs. If you look in the crowds of Prague's streets, you might see some familiar faces from Mid. Hi, Lauren.
And unlike Mid, no one was shifting back and forth urgently like they had to be. But again, the expressions, the movements, the details on the characters that actually matter definitely were a step up from Mid.
In terms of voice acting, there were times when the conversations didn't really feel conversational. There were long pauses and strange inflections that made it sound like the two actors were just recording lines in separate rooms without context, which, in their defense, was probably the case with COVID. Nothing incredibly jarring most of the time, just a little awkward.
Overall, this is a solid addition to Her Interactive's lovely roster of Nancy Drew games. It doesn't compare to Curse of Blackmore Manor for me,
Or Sea of Darkness for me.
but it's good, and it has us incredibly excited for the future of the series.
At the end of the day, it's not going to replace your favorite Nancy Drew game, but it's a step in the right direction for the series. If you're looking for a charmingly retro game from the early days of the company, you always have the full catalog of old games to go back to.
But if you're ready for a more modern take on Nancy Drew mystery, Key is worth a shot.
If you made it this far, thanks for watching.
And if you haven't yet bought Key from Her Interactive, we are running a giveaway for 2 people to win a digital copy of the game for PC or Mac.
In this video, we've hidden 7 colored keys, which you can see on the screen now.
On our Instagram post, comment the color order of the keys for an entry to win a digital copy of the game.
You can get one extra entry if you share the post and tag us.
Winners will be announced on May 31st. You can enter if you're part of the key launch team. We're gonna have some more details below, but that's the general idea of it.
Check us out on Twitch, where we stream Nancy and other fun games. We have an Instagram that we post puzzles and other things to, and Patreon, where you can find Nancy Drew ambience soundtrack videos.
Bye.